Following the death of Commander Shepard and the destruction of the SSV Normandy SR-1 in 2183, the paramilitary organization Cerberus invested billions into the Lazarus Project. The goal of this was to resurrect the commander so that they could lead the fight against the Reapers. After 2 years, the project was a success, with Shepard agreeing to find the cause behind the disappearance of entire human colonies, which turned out to be the enigmatic Collectors. To do this, they were given a ship based on the original SR-1 design, built over years using parts bought from multiple vendors in a hidden location in the Voyager cluster. Shepard and Jeff "Joker" Moreau named this new ship after the old, the Normandy SR-2. This replacement Normandy was significantly larger and almost twice the mass of the original, thanks to the numerous upgrades and additional facilities on board, and was much more generously appointed than its military forebear. The first new addition was the new location of the captain's quarters, a deck above the CIC and directly below the exterior pressure hull called the Loft by the fitting yard workers that built the ship. These quarters were lavishly appointed, including a large fish tank, display case and skylight. As with all exterior windows on the craft, it was protected by a blast shield when entering combat. On Deck 2, the CIC and bridge maintained the Turian-style layout from the SR-1, with the ship's commanding officer in a central position overlooking everyone else, but they now had the assistance of Yeoman Kelly Chambers to keep track of incoming communications and the state of the ship's crew. Aft of the CIC was access to the ship's armory and laboratory, staffed by Mordin Solus, a Solarian scientist and former member of the Special Tasks Group. Between the armory and lab was the ship's conference room that also doubled as a real-time point-to-point link to the elusive man, the leader of Cerberus, using a quantum entanglement communicator, even while the Normandy was operating outside of the convoy network. The crew facilities on Deck 3 were vastly expanded with the addition of a pair of observation rooms that doubled as the ship's library and bar. Despite the additional amenities, the majority of crew still had to hot bunk. The exception was the executive officer Miranda Lawson, who had her own private quarters on the port side. The center of the deck contains the ship's small contingent of cryopods with access to the main battery at the fore, as well as the mess hall and kitchen staffed by Mess Sergeant Rupert Gardner. On the starboard side was Dr. Karen Chakwas' medbay, with the ship's AI computer core leading off it. Life support control was also located on this deck. Deck 4 was for engineering, and the location of the vessel's Mass Effect drive core, fusion power plant, and hydrogen fuel cells. Compared to the original Normandy, the craft's Tantalus drive core was 3 times larger and was mounted vertically rather than horizontally. The ship used it to generate the Mass Effect field used for faster-than-light travel, as well as more directly for normal propulsion by projecting a mass concentration ahead of the ship that it effectively fell towards. This allowed it to stealthily change trajectory without the use of heat-emitting thrusters. On either side of the engineering deck there was also a pair of auxiliary cargo rooms, one of which included a small waste compactor and disposal unit. The lowest deck was the Shuttle Bay, which primarily acted as storage for the ship's UT-47 Kodiak drop shuttle. As the SR-2 was so large, it was unable to land or dock at many of the smaller ground-based facilities on worlds without extensive infrastructure. The M44 Hammerhead from Cerberus' Project Firewalker joined the Kodiak after Shepard retrieved it from the wreckage of the MSV Rosalie on Ziona. Though technically a civilian vessel, the SR-2 was equipped with 4 military-grade anti-proton thrusters, with both pro- and retrograde exhausts. These antimatter engines gave the ship exceptional acceleration and agility, further augmented by one of the additions Commander Shepard was given the opportunity to install, the Helios thruster module. This upgraded the standard maneuvering thrusters to use metastable metallic hydrogen, an extraordinarily efficient propellant that could even be used in lieu of the main engines for low-thrust, long-duration burns, saving on valuable antimatter. The Normandy SR-2 carried a similar armament to its predecessor, consisting of standard Guardian lasers, used primarily for defense against torpedoes and fighters, as well as a pair of Javelin disruptor torpedo launchers mounted on the joints between the main engines and the hull. After Garrus Vakarian joined the ship, he provided Shepard with contacts in the Turian hierarchy that allowed them to install the Thanix magnetic hydrodynamic weapon aboard the Normandy. This weapon was based on the salvaged main weapon of the dead Reaper Sovereign after the Battle of the Citadel, and consisted of a core of liquid iron-uranium-tungsten alloy suspended within a magnetic field. When the cannon was fired, a jet of this alloy formed a dense, armor-piercing projectile traveling at a significant fraction of the speed of light, rivaling the firepower of a cruiser on a much smaller spacecraft. Alongside the upgrades to the armament, Commander Shepard also had the opportunity to improve the ship's defenses. Standard issue protection against projectiles consisted of kinetic barriers, but these could be defeated by slow-moving, high-mass objects such as torpedoes with mass effect generators on board. Cyclonic barrier technology was one solution to this, and consisted of each barrier emitter firing rotationally, slapping aside incoming projectiles rather than simply halting them. The large amount of high-frequency emitters did increase the maintenance requirements for the system, and if damaged, an emitter reverted itself back to a static barrier. As kinetic barriers could not protect against directed energy weapons, warships also used ablative armor plating. Asari-made Solaris armor was superior as it could withstand far higher temperatures and stresses. It was made from carbon nanotube sheets interwoven with layers of chemical vapor deposited diamonds. The sheets were then crushed by intensely strong mass effect fields, creating an incredibly dense plate of armor. As these plates had to be attached directly to the ship's superstructure, shockwaves from massive impacts could still pass through the armor to damage the structure underneath. To assist in the mission against the Collectors, the Normandy SR-2 had a number of auxiliary systems of varying nature. It carried a probe launcher to survey planetary bodies for resources or points of interest, and could be upgraded for modular probes or even to include the Argus Advanced Mineral Scanner. This deployed a grid of 100 microsatellites around the target body, capable of rapidly providing digital elevation data at a 15 meter per pixel resolution, and if given more time, the grid could resolve down to a staggering 0.001 millimeters per pixel. Along with the Tantalus drive core, the second major feature retained from the original Normandy was the internal emission sink stealth system. This stored heat in lithium heat sinks within the hull, allowing the ship to run cold against the background temperature of space. By far the most unique system on the ship was the Enhanced Defense Intelligence, also known as EDI. This was a quantum blue box AI that was intended to oversee all cyber warfare for the SR-2, as well as monitoring the crew on behalf of the Elusive Man. She also offered technical analysis and advice, and acted as the main link between ground teams and the rest of the crew. While her computer core was housed behind the medbay, the crew could talk to her anywhere aboard the vessel, and there were a number of holographic projectors spread throughout the decks that provided an avatar for people to converse with. An AI was preferred for the cyber warfare role, as the reaction speed of a biological crew member or even non-intelligent computer would be far too slow to be effective. Offensively, she was capable of gaining access to the internal wireless network of enemy ships if they were close enough, gaining control of essentially any system on them. She protected the Normandy against any enemy attempts to do the same, and due to being partially derived from Reaper technology, was even provided with knowledge of anti-Reaper algorithms. As a safety precaution against the possibility of a rogue AI, Cerberus installed behavioral blocks within EDI that prevented her from accessing or gaining control over the rest of the ship. Upon entering service in 2185, the Normandy SR-2 served as Commander Shepard's base of operations during their campaign against the Collectors. It was during this time that Joker unshackled EDI after the ship was boarded in order to escape, giving her access to and control over every system on board. Essentially, she became the Normandy. After dealing with the Collectors, Shepard headed to the Bahak system on the very edge of the galaxy. Shepard was forced to destroy the mass relay in this system, as it was the access point to the entire network for the Reapers. Unfortunately, the energy released completely destroyed the Batarian colony in the system. Following these events, Shepard ultimately turned themselves in to Alliance authorities and surrendered the SR-2 into their custody. 6 months later, Shepard had rejoined the Systems Alliance, who had also recommissioned the Normandy as an Alliance vessel, giving it the SSV prefix and Alliance colours. An extensive refit of the ship was also underway to remove Cerberus surveillance equipment, correct errors in design, and move over to Alliance standard equipment. All this was in preparation for Admiral David Anderson to use the ship as a mobile command centre. The sudden and devastating arrival of the Reapers forced EDI to break out of dry dock to rescue Shepard and leave Earth, so that they could find a way to rally the forces of the galaxy and stop the invasion. This dramatic interruption to the ship's refit meant that it was only partially complete. Cables snaked across decks, tools and equipment were scattered throughout, and even Alliance personnel who happened to be on board found themselves serving as ad hoc crew members. The largest changes were to the rooms behind the CIC. Per Alliance regulations, the armory was moved to the shuttle bay, the communications room split up, and the laboratory was completely removed, with the med bay serving as a stand-in when it was required. Behind the old laboratory access door was a new security checkpoint with a small small conference area following it. Beyond that was the War Room, which acted as a focal point for many of the auxiliary data feeds the ship tapped into. It was used to monitor the progress of the galactic war against the Reapers, as well as planning operations with visiting officials. Leading off from the War Room was the replacement for the previous quantum entanglement communicator, though the entangled particles now linked to Admiral Anderson on Earth and Admiral Stephen Hackett, who was overseeing a top-secret construction project. The changes to the other decks were minor. Deck 3 included a new memorial wall to record the ship's casualties, including those of the SR-1, and the former XO's office had been taken over by Dr. Liara Tassoni and filled with equipment taken from the ship of the former Shadow Broker. The shuttle bay carried a pair of UT-47A Kodiak drop shuttles, an upgraded version of the original, as well as a makeshift gym. The M44 Hammerhead that previously occupied the bay had been taken by the Alliance to be examined, and was not on board at the time of the invasion. The Normandy's stealth systems allowed it to escape the attack on Earth, and it was sent to the Prothean Archive on Mars to collect blueprints for a weapon to use against the Reapers, known as the Crucible. The crew also acquired an advanced robotic body from a Cerberus agent, which Edie managed to gain full control over. This allowed her to interact more personably with the crew of the ship, especially with Joker, as well as joining Shepard on the ground within a certain range of the Normandy. After mobilizing the disparate forces of the galaxy for a cohesive strike against the Reapers, the Normandy led the unified fleet back to Earth. It was here that the Reapers had moved to the Citadel, revealed to be the key to using the completed Crucible. After an intense battle in space and on the ground, Shepard activated the Crucible, ending the threat posed by the Reapers. The Normandy was caught in the energy wave it released, sending it to an unknown world where it crash-landed. In its short-lived career, the ship had repeatedly demonstrated that its unique features were a worthwhile investment. The stealth systems and Tantalus drive core that repeatedly allowed the Normandy to enter and leave areas no other ship could access were adapted for use by Kodiak drop shuttles. Despite AI being outlawed, Edie single-handedly saved the ship and continually proved to be not only a useful asset but a valued member of the crew as well. Combined with Commander Shepard's intractable will and peerless leadership, the Normandy and its crew changed the fate of the entire galaxy.